Welcome to Tuesday Talks with Shawnee Lions Church. Each week, we gather to discuss how being a follower of Jesus impacts our everyday lives. Whether you have been a believer for a long time or still have lots of questions about faith, we would love to have you join us as we embrace the joy of a transformed life. Hello, welcome back. Today we are starting off our series on honoring God. So today I have Kris with me.
Hi.
And we are going to talk about honoring God with our time today.
Yep. You know, I love this because, I started developing kind of a theology of stewardship very early in my faith. Because
what does that mean?
So stewardship is the idea that while I might have some control of things, that I don't own them. And it comes from an Old Testament concept where even a servant would be given stewardship over his master's property. And so the idea is the servant certainly didn't own the property. However, he was still responsible for the right use of it, for maintaining it, for using it to his master's pleasure. And so I think we see that a lot. We see that in the parable of the minas, right, where the servants are handed different sums of money, and they're told to go invest it. And of course, in the parable, it's really harsh because there's a servant who just buries his. And Jesus is like, "Great, you're going to hell," and not really like that, but it's like, "Oh, you're in danger of terrible things," and versus the servant who went and made a great investment in it, which is where we get the term "well done," good and faithful servant, that kind of thing. So I think that one of the big things for me was whatever I have is God's. Mm-hmm. Okay, so in my early faith, I accepted Christ when I was 16. So a 1994 Chevy Blazer and my baseball cleats and my catcher's gear, those were God's. So if those are God's, but I am called to steward these resources, how do I use them? I use them through sportsmanship. I use them through giving rides to folks to go to church. And of course, as my faith develops and as I mature into an adult, that changes. So I remember making $6.15 at McDonald's an hour, which was above minimum wage because they thought I was that cool at that time, at least. And I remember tithing 62 cents, an hour. And my church in Mount Vernon wasn't huge, and it wasn't super well off financially, but they did not need my 62 cents an hour. Mm-hmm. I needed to give my 62 cents an hour. And the entire time I worked there, I probably never brought in $6,000 a year when I was a student, with umpiring, with working two different jobs. So, I could barely, I couldn't have paid a week of the pastor's salary, but I still think God used it, and he used it to mature me. Mm-hmm. Well, now I have a family. I have a son, I have a wife, I have a home, I have my career, and these are all God's. So I am called to steward those things. They belong to God, yet he's given me a tremendous freedom to act and to be the person that he's called me to be. Well, that meant that yesterday I spent time with my wife, and we had lunch together, and we picked out new, landscaping items. But those were all God's. It changed the way I look at things. So my time is God's. My calendar is God's. Now, for me, that means I'm incredibly intentional. You know this about me, Bridgett. I'm so ridiculously, embarrassingly intentional about my time.
Has that always been that way?
Oh, no. Heavens, no. I am, in my own flesh, I am an incredibly free spirit. No, I love being surprised. I love waking up and not knowing what I'm doing today. I crave those things a lot of times. And there are times where God gives those to me, and I'm very appreciative. However, God has blessed me with just enough to be useful, to be able to use my time to make a difference. Mm-hmm. So that's God's. And yes, God needs me to relax sometimes, and God needs me to go spend time doing things that give me energy, but God also needs me to be mindful of how I'm spending my time so I don't accidentally lose hours, because that's who I am. Okay. Naturally, I am someone who I could wake up and just putz around, and all of a sudden it's lunchtime, and I've done nothing with my day. And there are days I need to do that. Mm-hmm. However, that can't be how I lead my life.
So
that's
there's
not what God
freedom
called
in the structure.
Absolutely. And I get to pick so much, right? And again, some people, because I schedule time with family. Well, that's not because, I'm just so busy that I have to force myself to be with my family. It's because I want them to have my best time. Well, guess what? Mondays are not the best time for families of pastors to spend with their pastor, family member. We're tired. So I need to give them Friday.
That's good.
I need to give them the best. I think that's what it's about. It's about saying my time, my calendar is God's. How would God have me use this?
I think that's really important because I feel like I'm, like all things we talk about, I'm on the opposite end of that, in the sense that I came into a relationship with Jesus, but also spent a lot of years everything very programmed, very, very type A. And for me, the freedom wasn't in that. That was very self-protection. And I found that for me, now in this spot of kind of surrendering my time to Jesus, is everything doesn't have to be planned. And I don't think either, do I have to be structured? Do I have to have a calendar? Absolutely. But I'm no longer using that for self-protection in the same way that you saying, well, I don't really need to have anything planned for my own. If I'm the only person that matters in this equation, I need lots of structure. Or for you, if I'm the only person that matters in this equation, I don't need any structure. But viewing time from that perspective of, I want to use something well. I think Pastor Daniel said that in a sermon a couple weeks ago about if you were driving his car, or if you were driving someone else's car, you're going to be a lot more careful. You're going to be careful of how fast you hit on the brakes. You're going to be careful with how low you let the gas tank go. And I think that's the same idea of with time. Like, it's not my time.
Right.
And I get to choose how it's spent to honor Jesus. Right.
Well, and I think it's important to mention that, we can honor Jesus without having our calendar down to every 5 minutes. Now, we also have to recognize that we're not going to be as effective in some things. And there are some folks who, whether it's how they're created, whether it's God's call in their life, they don't have to be very structured. I think that's great. And that's not what this is about. It's not about how do you put your day planner together to best honor Jesus. It's about a philosophy, which is that my time is not here for my personal gain, right? So I can use my time to go try to make more money, right? But that's not what I'm called to do. What I'm called to do is to use my time to impact God's kingdom. Well, if those two things match up, and there are some people who are incredibly gifted at making money, and they give like crazy, and they support ministry, and I'm looking forward to a day where it's God's economy, and we don't have to worry about paper money. But right now, if we're going to go take 30 kids to life, right, and hopefully have transforming experiences, we need about $1,000 per kid. And I'm looking forward to the day where that doesn't matter anymore. But today, we got to figure it out. So that person who is just incredibly good at stewarding their gifts and their skills to make money, and they steward God's money by giving toward things that are going to benefit the kingdom, that person is in my eyes at least, they're doing great things. However, for me, that's not where my talents lie. Where my talents lie are, how do I impact people to move the kingdom forward? So it's not to say that when I'm out in my garage, building a box, that I'm dishonoring God. That's not true at all. And I think it'd be fair and I've had some very loving friends of mine who look at me and say, I don't rest well. You're right. I struggle with a personal guilt when I'm not actively doing something. Now that's of Satan, and I'm going to kill that someday. But in the meantime, the way I honor God is to say, I can only function for, let's say 70 years. Of those 70 years, my first 16, I didn't honor God with my life. This is all I've got left. Someday, my faculty might not be here to be able to do these things. And in this time, God calls me to be an amazing husband, an amazing father. And I think he wants me to be really great at what he's called me to do. Yeah. So I'm going to give my time to that. And of course, like I said, our relationship with God is not works-based. God loves Kris Browning because Kris Browning is God's son. And if one day I have a list of achievements that's greater than Billy Graham, this does not impress God. I cannot impress God. He just desires me. However, he's gifted me with something. My salvation, my skill set, whatever it is, my time. And I think he wants it for more than just me. I think he wants me to bless. When we talk about brothers and sisters in Christ, sometimes we lose the meaning of that. Those are God's kids. And he wants me to bless them too. So I hope my wife is blessed. I hope my son is blessed. I hope my church is blessed. But at the end of the day, am I using what God gave me to honor him to his fullest?
Yeah.
And that's stewardship right there.
So we've talked about this on a heart level or a spiritual level. These are all great topics, but what does that actually look like for you? What is every day Chris Browning asks himself this question, or every month or whatever, you're having this conversation to make sure you're on the right track?
So daily, it's, did I honor people above things?
Okay.
I have a big list, and I think in the 6 years I've been back to Shawnee Alliance, there have been 2 days where I did not have a task due that day or past due. And a big part of my job here is to get things done. And early in my time here, when somebody would walk into my office, I would type and focus on my computer and my task and give them what's left. A few months ago, I put up we had a spare TV, so I put up a big TV in my office, put my calendar on it. My idea being that people would be just be cognizant that I have a couple things that need done today, and they would look at that and maybe give me some grace if I needed to go. I've repented of those things. The first one I repented of is not giving people my time. Now, if someone walks in my office, and I feel like people are going to test me on this, but go ahead, because if I fail, I want to know. I say, let me put a bow on this. I finish the sentence or whatever I'm doing. I physically move my chair to a different position. I remove everything between me and that person on my desk, if I'm sitting behind my desk, and I engage them fully. They have 100% of Chris Browning. And if I need to go, I just ask. I say, hey, I'm really sorry. I need to be at this place. Can we carry this on later? However, so that's my daily diagnostic. Did I choose people over things? I think on a regular basis, especially when I'm on vacation, I just ask, overall, am I doing the right thing? The church did not ask me to come be here so that I can analyze our insurance policies and so that I can modify something in our policy notebook. The church brought me here to make disciples. When those things contribute toward that, I do them. When they don't, right, I need to reorient.
Which I think that's the huge part of, because I think some people can misinterpret what we're saying and say, oh, that means I need to lead a Bible study Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night in order for me to honor God with my time. But I would say that really important, what is my calling?
Yep.
I had a mentor ask me that a couple weeks ago, and she said, what is your specific calling?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I know this, this, and this. And she goes, okay. She goes, these other 3 things that you've said yes to are not actually honoring God. Because, yes, they're wonderful godly things that are advancing, but they're not in your hula hoop. They're not in your circle.
Right.
And so having that intentional time with God, for me, I've mentioned before of having a season word.
Yeah.
And
explain that, because it was a neat concept.
Yeah. So instead of a New Year's resolution, I pick a New Year's word. And for me, it doesn't last the full year. It's just I keep it until I feel in my heart God has released me to the next one. And so for an example, like my season word right now is adventure. Right. And so I have flown more and visited more states than I have my entire life this year. And I know that I missed my flight Friday morning. Again, I had problems last month when I flew and this one again. But it was so, let me explain that, of how it ties in. It's not a rabbit trail. First of all, knowing that God said adventure gave me a lot of grace, because I'm sitting there in Chicago in the airport with them telling me there's no flights left. And I said, well, there's grace for me to do this, and I need to be somewhere. God's going to have to take care of it. And it's one of the first times that I really gave myself, because it's one thing to know that, but to still carry the anxiety about it, of oh, what if God doesn't help me? Yeah. No, God told me that it's adventure. Yeah. He welcomed me into this, and so there has to be a grace for me to do it. Right. And so I literally put my earbuds in, listen to music, got an iced tea, got some chicken salad, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to sit here until they put me on, and they did. It was the last minute. I was here 15 minutes before Good Friday service.
Which was great to see you in that moment. You're like, am I doing anything? Because I have been in this area for 15 minutes. Am I doing anything? But here's the thing too, and this is what I love about that story. Yeah. So God calls me to be content.
Yes.
Not to get the things to make me content, but to be content regardless of my circumstances. That's what Paul said, yeah? Okay, God has called me to understand the secret of contentment that Paul talks about. He has called me to be at peace. God did not call Kris Browning to be comfortable.
Absolutely.
Now, listen, I'm not going to make this a grand theological statement. Now, I can point out that Jesus looked at a guy who was in the midst of burying his father. He's like, no, let the dead bury the dead. You can follow me, right? I keep looking for that scripture in the New Testament where Jesus says, pull up a lazy boy, recline, and this is how you will serve me. Now, he tells us to rest. He tells us to take Sabbath. He tells us to care for our soul. But I don't see that modern American idea of comfort where we've got it all, we live it all. So while I'm called to be at peace, which sometimes I struggle with, and I'm called to find contentment regardless of my circumstances, which I struggle with all the time, I am not called to be lazy. I am not called to be purposefulness. I've heard it both ways.
Purposeless.
To lack purpose.
Purposeless.
Yeah.
Is that the word?
It is now. We just used it. I am not called to be bored. And again, I want to honor God in all that I am. And if I'm comfortable, and I do crave comfort, if I'm comfortable, I mean, look at our season of ministry right now. We just had an amazing Easter. Of course, this may be I'm talking way in the past now, depending on when we release the podcast, but that's okay. We just had an amazing Easter.
Yeah.
We had an amazing Good Friday service. The interactions I'm having with our congregation have been phenomenal. The people who are finding grace in repentance, God's doing amazing things. Our family life team is the best functioning it's ever been, at least since I've known it. I desire to just sit in my couch and read something. But I think that this community still has some folks who don't know Jesus. I will take time to rest. I will take time to read. But I'm also going to be intentional about saying, God, here's my time. If God calls you to lead that Tuesday Bible study, you better lead it.
Absolutely.
But if God's calling you to attend that Tuesday Bible study, if God's calling you to prioritize fellowshipping with Christians on Sunday morning through worship over, I'm going to make some people mad, going to your sporting event, right? Or sleeping in. If he's calling you to get your kids into an intentional environment where they're seeing Jesus every day, instead of, I hate to say it, but we have so many competing demands that aren't from God that we feel compelled to honor.
That are religious.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what a religious spirit says, is that, let me just do all the things.
Right.
And I think taking it out of a church context I think that's really important even to know for your job of, what's my job description?
Yeah.
If God led me to work at this store, God led me to work at this company, what am I hired to do? And if I'm wasting my time, because you are, if I'm wasting my time doing things because I'm feeling guilt that this person always makes me do this or whatever, and we've had those conversations professionally, actually, like, you want to talk to Sarah about this, or you want to talk to Elizabeth, like, that's not what I'm supposed to do here.
Right.
And that's totally fine. There's no anger in that. It's just honoring other people, of asking the Lord, Lord, what have you called me to do here? So for me, that's my daily question. I mean, like, that's something that I just kind of pray through every time I leave the office, or anytime I'm with people, of, God, what did I accomplish everything you wanted me to? And sometimes that's cool. I'm done 10 minutes early. I'm gonna go home. And sometimes it's
take a nap.
And sometimes, praise the Lord, amen. He gives his beloved sleep. But sometimes I say an extra hour because I have stuff that God asked me to take care of, and it's not. There's no program to it. It's not. It's just these are the things that God has asked me to take care of.
Can I share with you the time I think I honored God most with my time? Working at McDonald's.
Okay, tell me about it.
So, I worked at McDonald's for about a year, and I worked with a bunch of heathens, and I loved it.
Amen.
I loved it. And I was good at making Big Macs. My Big Macs did not lean. You could eat your Big Mac in the car driving one-handed. Okay? That's how good my Big Macs were. Who cares?
Jesus does.
Well, okay, fine. I honored him by trying hard and honoring my employer. Okay, those are all true things. I don't want to minimize those. But here's the thing. I got to spend time with people. And I got to spend time with people. I remember who would, they'd get a track from the drive-thru, right? and they'd say, "Can you believe this? What kind of idiot does this? What does this mean anyway?" And they just turned to a pastor in training to ask, what does this message on this piece of paper mean?
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. And by the way, anyone who hands out tracts instead of tips, stop it. Just stop it. Give them a tip and a tract or offer to pray for them. But those moments.
A conversation for another day.
Man, we could do a whole podcast series on that. I loved being there. I loved every minute I was there because I was just craving the next encounter. We have one manager that he comes up, he says, "Kris, I gotta say I'm sorry. I just cussed." Like, "Oh, did you swear out a customer?" No, I was in the freezer. "Oh, did you cuss at one of the employees?" No, I was by myself. Like, okay. Why do you feel like you need to confess this to me? And I kind of jokingly said, "Okay, you are forgiven." But at the end of the day, I love that conversation because we talked about moral righteousness versus Christ. And I got to invite someone to come sing at the church. And she said, "Wait a second, I've never been there. You'd let me sing?" I was like, "Yeah, we'll let you sing." "Yeah. We're not going to let you sing Miley Cyrus, but we'll let you sing." We'd love for you to be there. We'd love for you to partake in what we believe is something meaningful. I loved it. And every moment, it was never about making Big Macs. It was about impacting people. Absolutely. And whatever you're doing, and if you're making Big Macs, that's awesome. Make Big Macs for the glory of God. But more importantly, see what God has called you to and say, if God has called me to make this person's day better, I will do it, even if I have to sacrifice a little bit of my own ego or whatever it may be. It's all about saying, my time isn't mine. It's God's. How would you have me use it? And guess what? You'll find more freedom in that than trying to escape into what you think is going to be meaningful or restful. Let God call you to rest. Let God call you to purpose. It's all about stewardship.
Wonderful. So I would say we'll leave you with some homework this week. Write down everything that you're involved in. What are the places, who are the people, what are the things that are calling for your attention? And really get alone with God and ask, God, what is your intention for my season?
Yep.
What am I called to? And how can I best serve you with my time? And, he might ask you to add some more things to your plate. Say, actually, you have a bigger capacity than you know that you have. Or he might say, hold up, let's make some more space here. And either way is fine. Everybody's different. Some seasons we're called to sit, and some seasons we're called to stand and fight. And I think when we're honoring God in that, the person on our left can be doing something totally different, and we're still secure in what God's asked us to do.
That'll preach.
Amen, amen. Well, thanks, guys, for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to Tuesday Talks. If you like this podcast, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. For more episodes and further information, please visit ShawneeAlliance.com. See you next week.